Grocery shopping with 3 kids is pretty reminiscent of a 3-ring circus. People stare, point, and usually laugh as my crazy crew descends on our local big box store. I'm always in a pretty perky mood after my morning pot of coffee, and sufficiently caffeinated for the day, we emerged upon the store in our typical dramatic fashion. Armed with binoculars, my 4-year-old daughter Nora and 6-year-old son were observing the creatures in the store. They studied pictures of dogs on display and gasped at books with lions on the cover. Hey, whatever these kids need to do to stay busy and close to the cart is fine with me. 7-month-old Claudia, strapped to the baby Bjorn fastened to my chest, kicked her feet and shook a toy, screaming in glee. All seemed right with the world as I brought out my freshly made list and took a left turn into the sundries, avoiding the toy aisle at all costs. We needed Band-Aids anyway, and spotting the display of boo-boo covers, I squatted down to reach for a Spider-Man box. Why squat, you ask? Because that's all you can do in a baby Bjorn. Leaning all over always feels like the baby's gonna fall out onto the floor. As I positioned myself for the squat, I noticed my son wandering too close to get a look at an employee with his binoculars, and as I called him back to the cart, I farted. Loudly. And of course, there was someone in the aisle next to me. What could I do? Blame it on the baby? If my infant had busted out that flatulence, she would have shot out of her baby Bjorn and back to the house. So I laughed. That really big belly laugh where you accidentally snort at the end. I apologized to the stranger and, wiping away a tear, checked embarrass myself off my to-do list. Rounding the explorers back to the cart, we headed for the produce area to find bananas and buttermilk. I smiled at the employees having a morning meeting in the middle of an aisle, and as we passed the red and khaki mass, I noticed an overall concerned look on their faces. Assuming it was an intense discussion about customer service, I got back to my grocery list. The 6-year-old, as if reading my mind, grabbed a bunch of bananas and dropped them in the cart. "We can have whatever we want here, Nora," Jack explained to his sister. "The workers want us to take it." I explained to the children that if you took something, that was called stealing. Hopefully someone heard me. Pausing to review my list, another stranger smiled and said, "It looks like you have your hands full," and patted me on the shoulder and whispered, "You're doing a great job, Mama." I thanked her for the kind words, and as I loaded 2 gallons of milk into my cart, the 50-something lady told me she remembered this time. She assured me life would get easier. What a lovely woman, I thought, and remembered I had to buy buttermilk for our afternoon cookie recipe. After a 30-second search, the children started to scatter, so I interrupted a team of employees to ask about the buttermilk. Eyes wide, the men exchanged glances at my request. I frowned and dismissed their strange looks. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed that my 4-year-old had dropped her blanket and, saying a silent prayer that I had found it, bent over to snatch it up. As I tilted my body forward, Claudia hung suspended in the air and proceeded to spew her morning milk all over the floor. The short peanut gallery next to me exclaimed, "Ew!" "Oops," I said, searching through my purse for some wipes to mop up the vomit. As I squatted, I farted again. And feeling the heat rising in my cheeks, ignored the sound and apologized to no one. Maybe they didn't hear it, I said to myself. "Ma'am, we do not have buttermilk," a pair of khaki pants said to me as I sat on my heels, passing gas and cleaning the floor. "I see a wild man," Jack said to Nora, peering through their binoculars. "Okay, thanks," I said, rose from the floor and steered the cart and my young explorers away from this mortifying scene. I decided our trip was over, and strangely not because the children were being unruly. For some reason, I was the problem that day, and frustrated, made my way to the checkout. As the children helped me unload the cart, I smiled at the woman behind the counter. "It'll be okay," she said. How did she know I was having a bad day, I wondered, swiping my debit card and returning her kind gesture with a silent smile and a head nod. The children helped load the bags into the car, and as I buckled baby Claudia into her seat, a foul stench filled my nose. After I changed a poopy diaper in the front seat of the car, I plopped myself down to gather myself. I was exhausted. Subconsciously opening the visor mirror, I realized in horror why everyone had been staring at me. My shirt was on inside out and backwards, and my lips were chalk white with the remnants of my morning tooth cleaning. I looked like a lunatic. Closing the mirror, I sighed and steered the car home, went into the house, and declared an early dessert. We ate cookies before lunch, and I realized that one day I might really miss this mess. Maybe.